In this video, we'll continue talking about evaluating expressions, but expressions using exponents. So first we need to know what a power is. A power is an expression that represents repeated multiplication of the same factor. For example, 81 is a power of 3 because 81 is equal to 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. A power can be written in a form using two numbers called a base and an exponent. The exponent represents the number of times the base is used as a factor. So 81 can be written as 3 to the fourth power. Now, this whole thing right here is called a power. The big number in the power right here, that's called the base. And the little number up here is called an exponent. And so writing 3 to the fourth power is the same thing as 3 times itself 4 times. So we're going to do some examples then of powers and how you say them correctly and how you do them. So for example, let's look at example A. If we have the power 7 to the first power, so that is said 7 to the first power. Now that just equals 7. It's just 7 times itself one time. It's just 7 in this case. So in this example, if we do 5 to the second power, you could also say 5 squared. Now I'd always have students who'd say things like 5 to the 2 power. That's incorrect. So it's 5 squared or 5 to the second power. Now this means that it's 5 times itself 2 times. So 5 times 5, which equals 25. Another example here would be 1/2 to the third power, or you could say 1/2 cubed. What that means is 1/2 times itself 3 times. So you just multiply your numerators, 1 times 1 times 1, which equals 1. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So 1/2 cubed is equal to 1/8. Now, if we just have a variable, talk about z to the fifth, for example, that said z to the fifth power, that is equal to z times itself 5 times. Just like that. And so, when we actually want to evaluate some expressions, let's look at these examples. Example A says evaluate the expression x to the fourth power when x equals 2. So that means we are going to substitute 2 in for x. So this x to the fourth then becomes 2 to the fourth, which equals 2 times itself 4 times. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Now if we do that out, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So 2 to the fourth is equal to 16. Let's look at example letter B. We want to evaluate n to the third power, or n cubed, when n is equal to 1/2. So I just plug this 1/2 in for n right here, and I have 1/2 cubed, which means that it's 1/2 times itself 3 times. I'm going to write that in parentheses because if I do, let me write it down here, I'll show you. If I do 1/2 times using dots, it gets a little bit confusing with all the dots. So just to clean it up a little bit and make it more clear, I use parentheses to write 1/2 times itself 3 times. When you multiply that out, you get 3 and 375 thousandths. And that would be 1/2 to the third power. So evaluating expressions is fairly simple. You just plug in what the variable equals into the variable in the expression and then solve.